Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have an interview today with Gala Jackson. She is a coach, and you guys are going to love this conversation because we talk about careers. We talk about job promotions, not getting job promotions. We talk about boundaries. We talk about standing up for yourself, courage, confidence, clarity, all the great stuff. And I think everyone's going to be able to relate to parts of her story. So let me just give you her bio and we will dive right in. Gala Jackson is passionate about helping women stand in the power of their femininity. As an accomplished executive career and leadership development coach, she works with domestic and international women to redefine and take ownership of their success. She empowers women to discover and live in alignment with the strongest, boldest, most courageous version of themselves. Her expertise has appeared in the TED Global series The Way We Work, with more than 1 million views, and in globally recognized publications such as the New York Times, Marie Claire, Essence, Huffington Post, and Millie Magazine. Gala holds a master's in educational leadership and a bachelor of fine arts in communication. She's a certified executive career and leadership development coach, a certified career management coach, and a certified life coach. Let's dive in, guys. Everyone, I am so thrilled today. We have Gala Jackson, who is an executive career and leadership development coach. And I've just known Gala for a couple of years, not even a couple of years. And every time I think of her, the word formidable comes to my mind. And yeah, so I'm excited to have a chat with her today. So welcome, Gala.
I am so excited to be here. I love the name of the podcast. I love the work that you're doing. I'm ready to talk about how to ditch the struggle because, listen, they are way overdue. Okay. I'm just really excited for our time together today. I'm an open book. So
yes, I know you are. Yes, let's get in. So why don't we'll start with, a little bit of the backstory. Tell us a little bit about who you are and actually how you got into coaching.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my background is actually in higher education. I really loved college. I had a really wonderful experience. I was really involved on campus and thought that that was a career path for me. I wanted to be an academician. I wanted to be a vice president of student affairs. And that was a trajectory that I set on and started in higher education for almost 10 years. And I had always been the friend that people came to when it was time to get a job. Can you look at my resume? Can you read this? Can you help me prep for my interview? I just became that friend. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that work. And when I was working in higher education, students were coming to me and saying, how do I talk about working for you? Because it wasn't just like a regular college job. You taught us so much and you let us do so many things that I'm not sure how to translate it to like an employer. Mm-hmm. And so I started working with students on their resumes. And over time, I was like, okay, these are signs. This might be a thing. Like, what's happening? Yeah. And I was in a place in my career where I wasn't satisfied. And, you know how the story goes. The universe, God, all works things out for our good. And I made the leap of faith. I said, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. At that time, I wasn't married. I didn't have children. So I felt like my risk was low because of those things. And I started out as a resume writer, and I was known as the Millennials resume writer. That was my branding. There wasn't anybody else like in that space, right? Working with millennials, and I had a low cost of living in a sense. So I could kind of, like not charge the rates that other people were charging. I was able to get my rates lower. But long story short, did resume writing and then dovetailed into career coaching, absolutely fell in love and went for it, and have been doing it ever since. The irony is that when I was a freshman in college, my major was psychology because I wanted to be a guidance counselor.
Oh, here you go. Right.
Here we go.
So it all makes sense. It connects.
That's right.
A little bit about your work career before you decided to bet on yourself. And first of all, I love the way you say bet on yourself because it is a risk.
It is.
to do your own thing. But you had a background of working for others, and I know you
Mhm.
have some good stories.
I have plenty of good stories. Tell me what you want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I've been reading about them. So Gayla's book is called Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. And I just before we actually started recording, I was really gushing about how much I love this book.
Thank
It is so well written. Like I just want to start there. It's so well written and easy to follow. And I have so many highlights in my I did the Kindle version. And what the reason I also love this book, there's so many exercises and we'll get to that. So if you want to start doing a deep dive and you basically are getting coaching from you, this is the book for it.
Yeah.
But I've been reading about your stories of some of your jobs. And I know there was one pivotal one where you were actually encouraged to go for an internal promotion. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it took a turn.
It definitely took a turn. And this is my story. I think is a story of so many women. So I don't think it's unique to me by any stretch of the imagination, which is why it's in the book. But like you see this job opening and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to go for it." And you're like, "No, no, I don't think I want to do that. I don't know if I want to sign up for more because I'm already doing the quote unquote other duties as assigned, right? I'm already kind of maxed out." But
Yes.
then you begin to think, well, I'm already doing these extra duties. Like this is an opportunity to get some more money for the duties that
You're
I'm
already
already
doing.
doing, right? So long story short, in the book, I talk about the fact that I did not apply. We had a failed search. And they said, if you had applied for this job, you wouldn't even be in this position. And I was like, well, why didn't anybody pull me aside and say, hey, you should be thinking about this job? We didn't see your name come across the table. And I know that there are different policies in HR that prevent some of those things from happening, but you know that there's a way for
Mhm.
people to let you know. So we had that conversation in the search committee. If you had applied for this job, we wouldn't even be in
Mm.
this position. And I was like, well, I was invited to be on the search committee. Like, here we are. And so when the search failed, I put in for the job. I declined being on the search committee for the second round, and applied for the job.
Mm.
Had an interview, did a great job. I felt like, these people know me. They know my work. Did a great job in the interview, and didn't get a second one. And I was like, what? Like, how? Why? Like,
And was
is
that an
this
email
punishment
or
for not applying? Like, what do you
interesting?
mean? And yeah, it's always done like very neutral. You can't have these like side conversations because you're in the candidate pool. But long story short, I did not get that job. They hired a man,
Okay.
which isn't a problem at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hire someone who knows how to do the job,
Yeah.
right, it's even better.
It's even
But
better.
within his first few weeks on the job, he came in and we had our one-on-one. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to talk about my business unit and the things that are going on and what I need, and hear his vision and his direction and what he'd like to see from me. And we sat down and he said, hey, I'm going to need for you to tell me everything you know about this job because I don't know what I'm doing. And I literally sat there in silence. And you have that moment where you're like, I could go off right here. You're like calculating the cost. Like, am I
Yeah.
about to go off? And you're like, no, no, not yet. But it was very clear to me that my time in that organization was winding down
Mm-hmm.
very clearly. And yeah, it's
Now,
wild.
this was a director level role. Was that correct? That
This
you
role was an assistant
assistant
director
director.
level
Okay.
role. That's
Okay.
right.
Highly qualified for it. You obviously were working with
Hmm.
this organization.
Hmm.
They said, hey, Gayla, why don't you apply? And you go and do that, right? So you're going through the process. They hire someone. I'm just recapping here. And then the person who they hire sits in front of you and says, you need to tell me everything because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your once you said you fell silent, but did you suddenly feel was there a people pleaser part of you that wanted to jump in and be like, hey, you know what, I'll show you the ropes? Or did you really recognize that this was a moment for you to actually step back?
Oh no, I was not in the people pleasing phase at
Okay.
all. This was a clear, like, absolutely not. And there have been challenges leading up to it. So I was already a little bit like, you know, I didn't know that I was still directly in alignment, with the
Mhm.
role. I mean, work was fine. I was producing results, meeting my numbers. But for me personally, I was like, something that's it's
Yeah.
just not in alignment. And I thought, well, maybe being in a more strategic leadership level role, right, would be the change that I needed, which is why I ended up applying. But um, yeah, no, I didn't feel any need to people please. I was really shocked at, to some degree, just the audacity to come
Yeah.
in and say that and to not even fake it like I know what I'm doing
Mm.
or whatever, right? But to just
Yeah.
literally say, you need to teach me everything you know.
Yeah.
And to say it almost in a joking manner as if I, like you said, be a people pleaser and placate and just
And
go
that
with
you're
it. And
responsible for his training.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely not. I'm happy to tell you what I'm doing. I'm
Yes.
happy to inform you of our process and how things
Yes.
work here, but I am not going to teach you how to do your job. You're making more money than I am.
Hmm.
You're more senior than I am. Like you're supposed to be leading
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
Not me teaching you how to do your job. But I think that so many women are in or have been
Hmm.
in those situations or similar experiences where someone more junior gets a more senior role
Oh yeah.
and the person doesn't know what they're doing. They cause challenges, like the way that they do stuff doesn't really consider, right?
Hmm.
What you are doing and what you have going on and what your needs are. But that's why I put it in the book because I was like, I know this is happening. I know this is happening. It's happening a lot.
It is
And
happening all over the place. I can think of five, six friends right off the top of the bat that's
mhm,
happened to or happening to, and that they have not gotten promotions that they were more than qualified for, especially internal promotions, like within a company,
yeah,
and they're overlooked
yeah,
and it's given to some random person for whatever reason. There's reasons, but we won't get into those. And it takes a lot of audacity, as you said, to be able to sit there and say, yeah, I know nothing. And it's not a matter, that's not being vulnerable. That's just being audacious.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there are just different ways to handle that, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm not as familiar with X, right? Or this is what I do know, but tell me how you all do it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Or before you even get into any of that, ask me how I'm doing.
Yes.
Tell me about your leadership style. Ask me about my work style. Like, let's get some
Yeah.
of those basic things, nailed down. But you came in swinging.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, you're thinking that I think it sounds like the wheels were turning. What was the plan after that as to whether you would stay in that job, move on?
Yeah. I mean, anytime someone comes in to be your direct leader and there's an obvious gap in competency, for me, it is like, I got to get out of here
Okay.
because a couple of things are going to happen. Like, if things don't go well, you probably are the type to push it off and say it was my fault or a colleague's fault. Like, I don't think that those types of people are necessarily ones that are inclined to take responsibility for their actions. I was already, feeling like I was at capacity, right?
Hmm.
Doing the
Hmm.
job that I was
Hmm.
doing and had already been asking for some additional resources. So I knew like this is not going to go well. And I also, in full transparency, also know as a woman and as a woman
Hmm.
of color,
Hmm.
listen, the blame gets shifted a lot, right? To women and particular women of color, Black women.
Hmm.
I said, oh no, 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 no. I see what this is happening. So I knew that I needed to have a plan,
Okay.
right? And you want to you need to see your plan through. You need to have a sound plan. You need to be able to execute your plan. And so that takes time. So it's like, okay, how am I going to create boundaries for myself while I'm still in this role, knowing what I know about who I'm going to be working for? How do
Hmm.
I set some internal boundaries? And
Yes.
how do I, protect myself, emotionally, mentally, while I'm navigating these nuances at this job until I'm in a place where I'm ready to submit my letter of resignation. Now, I might have typed up that letter of resignation months
Yeah.
before I submitted it. Okay.
Yes.
But, you set the intention.
Yes.
But you need to have a plan. You need to have boundaries about how you're going to navigate it, making sure that you're documenting things, right? As best you can, as often as you can while you're, working your plan.
So, what was one of the boundaries or one or two boundaries that you set, those internal boundaries, while you knew you were working under this leader?
Yeah. So for me, it was really, I'm going to do what is necessary for this job, but I'm not going to keep going and overextending myself and
Hmm.
saying yes to all these extra things that I may be expected to say yes to. I'm going to say, hey, I actually already have a full plate. What would you like for me to not do in order to do what you're asking me to do? So having some really clear boundaries about, okay, I know that I'm going to be exiting. I'm not going to continue overextending myself. I need to redirect that time and energy into other things that are going to set me up for what is next.
I love that. That's being really conscious of your bandwidth, your time, your energy. Were you worried at all? Because I have been someone that, I don't know if you know too much about the story, but I did leave a really toxic job in 2021 when I was working for a cosmetic company and I started setting boundaries in terms of what my workload could be and how much I can do. I was immediately labeled
Yeah.
difficult. Like I was labeled difficult.
Mm, wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't get the label difficult, at least that I'm aware of. I just really started to fade to the back,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
I can remember, I don't think I've ever actually said this, but I can remember um going to like our staff meetings and intentionally going later, right? Instead of going early, like going like late at the last possible second, because the room that we met in, the conference room didn't have enough seats at the table. So I
Hmm.
would wait to the last
Oh,
possible second to still be on time, but get a seat like that was up against the wall and not at the table. And I would
interesting.
still sit there and like have my notebook and like take notes when I needed to. But I was like also like thinking about, okay, I need to be doing this for my job search or this is my grocery list for the week. Like I was doing other things
Yeah,
to
you
manage
were.
the time. And I would get like called out, like I wouldn't volunteer or speak up nearly as often as I
Mhm,
had before.
mhm, mhm.
And so my boss's boss would say to me, what do you think about this? Like randomly out of the blue, or we haven't heard from you. What do you think about this? And I was like, okay, I think it's fine.
Oh, wow.
I think it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I like this part of it. And I would genuinely say I do like this part of it. I didn't give any other feedback and just was like, that's it. That's all I got.
That's all Gayla's.
And that's all
Yeah.
I got.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there was a stark shift, in the room. And I'm sure that there were some conversations probably had behind my back. But if they had come to me and said, hey, this isn't working out, we're going to let you go, I was already working on a plan.
Yeah. You had your
So,
plan and you are great at plans. And this is the point where I want to mention. So Gayla has an amazing video that is being seen by I don't know how many people now, but I watched it about a year ago. How to quit your job without ruining your career. So if you want to go more into it,
yeah.
like if you want more deep dive tactics, I know you lay it out in that video, so
Mhm.
succinctly, so well. I love that you're talking about the plan though, because the plan is important and it doesn't matter if it does take time. I think people put so much pressure on themselves. They're like, I got to get out now. But you seem
Yeah.
to be very strategic about how you were going to do it.
And there are some instances where the building literally is on fire, and
Yeah.
you need to get out of your job. And so those are unique
Yes. Mm-hmm.
circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I was not in a situation where the building was on fire.
Okay.
I just was in a situation where I knew this was not going to work out. This
Yes.
is not,
That's a
this is
great
not what I'm going to
analogy.
do.
Yeah. It was just a little bit of
And so there's,
smoke.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's enough
Yeah.
to say, oh, like you see, like, it's like you see the grease on the stove and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to be a fire. And
Yeah.
you start planning accordingly, which is what I tell my clients when I'm working with them is that you should always be thinking about what's next. Be present and be where you are, but make sure that you have a plan, like a career
Yeah.
plan, a career roadmap, so that if you ever get in a situation where you're realizing that things may not work out or you are not happy, you already have some things in place that you've been thinking about. Um, but yes, in the video, How to Quit Well, I lay out step by step
Mm-hmm.
how
You
to
do.
graciously bow out
Yeah.
of any organization, because the one thing I do know is that relationships are powerful and you want to be thoughtful. I'm not saying don't burn any bridges because I'm not that person. I think some bridges you can burn
I
and
was
let them be.
literally just going to ask about burning bridges. So we'll get to that. That word was in my head. But you do, but yeah, there's a way to do it
That's right.
when, yes. So on that note, then do you feel that sometimes you do need to burn a bridge?
I think that it is okay to burn bridges. I think you have to put a lot of thought and intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very short, very, very short list of like, like one or two people where it's like,
Yes.
hey, if our paths ever crossed, I would be obviously cordial and I'm going to be who I am, but I'm going to decline whatever the offer is because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to work with them. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
and so I know that. I also know, even in those instances, my work, I think, does speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I work with integrity.
Yes.
I do what I do well. I'm honest about what I can and can't do. And I have a reputation of that, of
Yes.
integrity, of being smart, of being a leader, of being thoughtful, of being intentional. And so I think those are the other things you have to consider. If you're going to burn bridges,
Yeah.
what reputation exists? And then do you
Mm-hmm.
have people who to your defense? If that one or those one or two people you burnt that bridge with
Yeah.
have something opposite to say.
Yeah.
But I burn bridges, I think, in a way that maybe they don't know that they're on fire, that they got
Mm-hmm.
burned,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Graciously.
because it's like at the end of the day, we just don't see eye to eye. We just don't have the same values, right? Like we're not
Mm-hmm.
aligned. And I don't necessarily ascribe to the belief that, like people are always terrible people. You
Mm-hmm.
just may be in a really terrible season, but if this is how you handled your terrible season, like
Yeah.
there are just
Yes.
certain things and certain experiences that you have where you just know this is probably who you are and I'm good. I'm out. Right.
Yeah. I'm out.
But anyway,
It's
yeah, in the video I talk about how to quit well, how to leave, how to navigate those challenging work relationships as you're exiting out the door, who to talk to as you're leaving. That was a really fun video, a really great experience to put together. That was for the TED team, the Global
mm-hmm.
TED
Mm-hmm.
network. And I think we're up to like 1.6 or 1.7 million views. It's
That
wild.
is wild.
Wild.
I think
But
I
it's
remember
also
your 1 million
encouraging.
party. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So 1.6, that makes sense. It's also, what did you say? Like,
It's
sorry.
also encouraging to know that many people have watched that video because what that says to me is you're thinking about your next move, right? That you're planning, you're recognizing that you deserve more, that you can have more, and that you're ready to take some action around it. And so I find that to be encouraging. Also challenging in some ways that many people are thinking about quitting their job. That's the flip
Mhm.
side of it.
Yes.
But the fact that you want to do it and do it well and recognizing that it's time to do that is also really great. That's the encouraging part.
It is really encouraging. And putting the pieces into action, I think you think about it for a while and then you have to come up with those pieces. And yeah, I love that you're so strategic about it and thoughtful about it. You are thoughtful about how you're leading and how you're coaching. I want to dive into your book because right on page 2, I have this highlight that sets the stage for the book that really struck a chord with me. And I think it's going to hit with our listeners. You say, I firmly believe that our adult work is undoing all of the messaging we've been assigned as young women, returning to the true essence of who we are created to be on a soul level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I have found in my coaching work, in my own journey, that that's what it is.
Mm.
That is what it is. And, as I've gotten older, they say the older you get, the wiser you become. I think it's true.
It is true.
I'm sure it's true for you as
Yes, it
well.
is.
But you just realize like, okay, I really can do anything that I want to do. It really is okay for me to be my full authentic self. You will find your people.
Yeah.
You will find the right job or entrepreneurial venture,
Mhm.
right? If you're not in the right, if you don't find the right job, like I think we're taught to assimilate.
Mhm.
Standard of beauty. This is the expectation of what it means to be a career woman. This is the expectation and standard of what it is to be a mom. This is the expectation of what it is to be a partner. All of these things are laid out for us and they are everywhere, everywhere. I mean, like we get Barbies when we're kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
Talk about like body image and like
Yeah.
all of those things. And like, no knock to Barbie. I get it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, but all of these things, like you get married and you need a kid and, all of these things, these expectations that you're supposed to have, and the way that we beat ourselves up when we don't meet those expectations and don't, assimilate. It's wild to me. And there's so many women that have walked around with like years of like hurt and anxiety and depression
Mhm.
because of these messages. And they're messages that they may not have even grown up with. They may have come from a very healthy household. I came from a healthy household,
Mhm.
but those messages all around you, like in school, in college, like
They pound you over the
they
head
pound
constantly.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
constantly.
man, we grew up in a time where we didn't have social media
Yeah.
like these kids do, right?
Yeah,
Like we went to school and then we came home and we got a break from whatever was going on,
we
right?
did.
At school.
Mhm.
But kids nowadays, they don't, it's 24/7.
Yeah,
And there are companies that target them like,
no.
oh,
It's I'm really going through a phase of kind of really looking at how I all these belief systems that I've adopted, all these rules and regulations that I feel
mhm,
like I have to do, these assumptions that I have to do things
that's
this
it.
way. And that's when I love talking about the career stuff because this whole idea that has to be a linear career, that you're going to have this specific path, all of these
Mhm,
things. And we are just adhering to this map that's being put in front of us
that's
that
it.
someone made up.
Yes.
And people are
Literally.
perpetuating. People
Yeah.
are just perpetuating it.
Mhm.
So how did you start breaking free of some of these, specifically with your career, some of these like assumptions that you had to do things a certain way?
Entrepreneurship has been one of the greatest teachers of my life.
Yeah.
Um, when you become an entrepreneur, like you just realize, one, first of all, entrepreneurship is hard.
Yeah.
Is hard. Listen, people out here, make it look easy or glorify it. It is hard,
Yes.
and it's a very intentional decision. But it is a really amazing teacher if you allow it to be. It's a gift to be able to build a business or do work, whether it's like freelance work or whatever the case may be, that really aligns with you and your interest in what you want to do. And once you get a taste of that, like, oh, like I can actually do work that I really enjoy and that I want to be doing on a schedule that really works for me and my body rhythm and still get paid. You get curious. You're like, what else
Yeah.
can I do?
Yes.
Right? On my own terms and in my own way that really works for me and my lifestyle and what I want to do. And it's like the tipping point. And it was for me.
Are there any Is there anything with entrepreneurship that you didn't expect that you really love that you just didn't think about and you're like, "Oh, I actually love this about being an entrepreneur," other than the obvious of, I get to run my own schedule?
Yeah. I get to choose who I do and don't want to work with.
Mm.
I can't say I was surprised by that, but you do feel like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I have to make money, so I'm going to have to maybe work with some people that I don't want to work with. Even though I'm doing work that I love on a schedule that I love, I may have to take on people that I don't want to work with to get paid, and that's not true. I mean, you do what you have to do to pay your bills, but you get to choose. You really do get to own that piece of who you want to work with, and who you essentially want to work for, because they, in some ways, become your
Yes,
similar
they
to your
do.
boss, right?
Yes, absolutely they
Um,
do. That's a great point because we do forget that's a choice thing. We forget
mhm,
we have choices who we're working with, whether we're an
yeah.
entrepreneur or whether we're working for a company.
Mhm. Always have your choice. You always have choices. So I can't say I was necessarily surprised by that per
Yeah.
se, but I really love that and grew into that, right? When you're a green entrepreneur, you kind of take whoever,
Yeah.
you need, right? And whoever needs you rather. So you jump into that way of doing it. I love that I get to be multi-passionate. Like I love that I get to try certain things and see if it sticks and it works, or if it doesn't. So I don't feel like I have to stay necessarily in one particular box in
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. So having that creative freedom, I really, really love that. What I have been surprised about, I guess, which is funny, is that my creative expression or the ideas that I have actually resonate with other people. Like you wonder, like,
Yeah.
does anybody else feel this way? Does anybody else think this? Even writing the book is anybody else gonna feel the same or like have similar experiences? And then you do it and people are like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for you. Like this is
Yes.
exactly what I felt, or was so on time for me. Nobody's said this or created this in the way that you have done it. And so that's always really um exciting and
It
really humbling.
is. It is because no one can say things like you can or I can, or each person has their way of saying it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a common fear that there's no point in writing our book, having the podcast, doing whatever it is, because we're saying similar things to what's out there. But it's the voice, it's the uniqueness. And I get the sense that you just have maybe there was some wavering or like not sure of, is anyone really going to read this? But there does seem to be an innate sense of confidence in your ability and what you have to say.
Mhm.
That's the sense I get.
Thank you for that. I think that there is. I talk about this in the book because people have asked me, how is it that you're so confident? Or you just, like you said, you
Hmm.
just seem to have this
Hmm.
ability to just be confident. And like I said, I talk about this in the book. For me, confidence is conviction. And most people don't know this, but I'm naturally an introvert. So that doesn't mean that I don't like people or peopling. It just means that I get re-energized by alone time and like
Yes.
reflection and like being out in nature and things like that. Um, but conviction is it.
Mhm.
Conviction makes me get up on a stage. It makes me do podcasts because I really believe in having intentional, authentic conversations about women and about work and about our careers and about our families, motherhood and
Mhm.
mothering, right? Like, I really believe in having more authentic, open dialogue, vulnerable dialogue about those things. And because that is one, a value of mine, connection and community, and then having a conviction, almost like a mission to bring more women together to have more authentic conversations, that gives way to the confidence that I have.
Right. So it's your fuel. It sounds like it
Mhm.
fuels you to kind of step into that courageous version of yourself.
Yes,
And yeah, my friend in high school back in the day used to say you just have to have the courage to stick to your convictions.
that's right.
She would
That's
say
a
that in like
beautiful way
grade
to say it.
9. I feel like that belief got instilled that you do have to really believe that you can be confident and
Mhm.
step into that version somehow, even though you're sometimes shaking and nervous. Like, were you nervous when this book got launched to the world and it was like,
Yeah,
here it is?
terrified. So I'm a huge fan of therapy. So I
Yeah.
remember scheduling my therapy session like strategically before book launch and like talking to my therapist, like, okay, how am I going to navigate, this week? How am I going to manage this? And I will share transparently. I decided that I was not going to watch the numbers,
Mm,
that that my job was to write the book and put the book out, right? That this opportunity had presented itself. I was the person for the job because I do believe opportunities don't come unless you're the person, like you're the person for the
hmm.
job. And so this opportunity came and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm convicted about doing this. These are things that I really believe. And my job was to write the book. What happens with it after that really honestly and truly is out of my control, right?
It
Like,
is.
we
Yeah.
like to think that we control much more than we do. It really is out of my control. But I just said, I stand by what I wrote
Hmm.
and I trust that it's just not my story. It's the story of clients that I've worked with.
Hmm.
It's our collective voice. It's our collective stories that I'm telling. And that was enough for me to say, okay, at least somebody, even if it's just, my former clients, right? They're going to
Yes.
love it. They'll see themselves like interwoven into this book. But that's not my job to focus on how many copies get sold and if I hit a bestsellers list. All of those things would be dreamy. But honestly, like having the opportunity to write a book and be traditionally published was dream enough, right?
It's incredible.
If I remember correctly, I think there's only like 5% of traditionally published authors that are Black.
Wow. That's a
And
staggering number.
staggering number. And it is, a lot of people choose to self-publish, right?
Yeah.
Versus going through a traditional publishing house. But it had always been a dream, like tucked in my heart, like in the very back, like
Mm.
in a secret box, like to write a book,
Mhm.
one day. And so I just went with that. And it's been so humbling and lovely, I think is the word I want to use. It's been so lovely to literally hear from women across the world who message me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I got a copy of your book. And I cried in the first 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
First of all, like, thank you, Amazon and book retailers, for shipping all across the world. Okay.
Yes, let's do
That
that.
part.
Thank you. Yes.
That part. Thank you. But then to know that you have touched a woman, millions of miles away from you, and she is saying, yeah,
Yeah.
I see myself in this exact story. And this book, I went and bought two extra copies to give, to my girlfriends, or to
Yeah.
give, it's wild.
I've
It's such a
texted
gift.
it to so many people the first day I started reading. I'm a binge reader, so I did like 6 hours at a time. Or
Oh,
I do like, yeah, that's my dream day is 6 hours of straight reading.
nice.
And I know so many people that I was like, you have to read these stories, because I hear what they say to me, and I'm seeing it on your page, some of those thoughts coming out. And to me, that is just so, so cool. Like to, yeah, have that reflection, have that mirror, and you're someone who's walked through it, and you are speaking from experience, and there's the truth in there, there's the vulnerability. Yeah, it's incredible. So tell me a bit about, as you when I was reading your book, you have the ascend method for coaching,
Yes.
which I did want to touch on because I thought the structure was incredible, and I would love the listeners to hear more about that.
Yeah, the ascend practice, and it really is a practice because you revisit it, right, as you evolve and grow throughout your career. But it is just what I found to be just a very practical approach to navigating career change, transition, and dare I say, even like life transition, right? Like it dovetails into that for sure. But the ability to acknowledge, what is no longer working, to study your strengths, to consider
Mhm.
your values, right? I think one of my most favorite parts of the Ascend practice is narrating your story,
Okay.
like getting comfortable with hearing your own voice, of taking the agency of telling your own story and not letting other people tell the story for you. It's so powerful. Being able to replace lies and like falsehoods, like expectations from other people, with the truth of who you are in your story and who you are now, is, woo, it's deep. Like, get your tissues.
What are the narratives that people tell themselves that they, I feel like people are very married. They almost have a trauma bond with the narrative that they tell themselves. That can be this really kind of not happy, negative, really dark story. And they have, they need to take that time to kind of look at it. And we don't often do that.
No, we don't. We learn to be very critical of ourselves,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
But it's interesting to me, like, when I was like in my early coaching days, I would record coaching sessions for my clients and
mhm.
give them the recording. I would keep them confidential, give them the recording in their client account. And so many clients would say, I can't even listen to it because like listening to the sound of my own voice, right? I mean, how many opportunities do we ever have to like listen to our own voice, or to be told that our voice is valuable?
Mhm.
It's so rare, if ever, that we get those opportunities. And so you can imagine learning to tell your own story, um, and not feel the pressure and the weight of the expectations, or what is somebody going to think, or whatever. It's a power move for sure. Um, but it's so necessary. And I think it's why we struggle when we're in interviews,
Mhm.
and when we're going for a promotion sometimes, because we're not comfortable. We're, particularly as women, we are taught that talking about ourselves is boastful,
Yes,
right? It's
totally.
not being a team
Mhm.
player. It's, all this other, crazy stuff. And we don't tell men not to do that.
No.
But those are all the things that come into it. And while we struggle so much with learning to narrate our own stories and use our voice. And so I wanted to specifically call that out, in the Ascend practice. But you have to do the steps before it. Like, you have to
Yeah.
acknowledge what is no longer working. What
Mhm.
is it that I want to be doing? What is it that I value? How do I work? And being able to acknowledge those things, if only for yourself
Yes.
initially, gives way to like, I think I'm just going to start showing up like this because this is the truth. And
Mhm.
you get so tired of carrying the weight
Yes.
and trying to fit and like stuff yourself into all these like things that you should be. I think at some point you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel like that square peg in a round hole or whatever it is. And it is the weight. And then it's the permission. And I know you like the word
Mhm.
permission as well,
I
to step into what we want our narrative to be, who we actually are, that
That's right.
authentic self, not hiding, not
Mhm.
just yeah, being transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the last part of the ascend process is decide
Mhm.
to become the strongest, boldest, most courageous version of yourself. And it is a decision because that decision, it does come with some risk, right? But risk also brings reward. But you have to make a decision. And you have to decide what you're ready for, how you want to show up, what the change is going to be, what your new boundaries are. Um, yeah, you have to decide. You
So
have to make a decision.
how do you coach people who have a really difficult time making decisions and don't want to make a decision or resist making decisions?
I generally ask them one question: what is it costing you to continue down this path? And they're usually very clear about what it is costing them. And you follow it up with, if that is the cost, how much longer can you afford to pay it? Yeah. And if you're willing to do that, let's do like a cost analysis and compare it to what it would cost you to decide to choose yourself,
Mhm.
to have better boundaries, to choose wellness. And what does that look like long term? And who gets to benefit from that version of you? It's the people that you love the most.
Absolutely. What are some of those fears that come up that you see with your clients when they're like, okay, I'm going to make the decision. I've made the decision. I'm going to make the leap. What are some of the most common fears that you see?
There's a sense of like loss,
Mm.
like I'm going to lose like relationships. I could lose my job, like all of those things. So I think there's a big loss is probably a huge one. Um, and then we all worry about, to some degree, like feelings of rejection, like not being accepted for being who I, truly am. And what does that mean or what does that look like? And there's the loneliness piece. So
Hmm.
there are fundamental human, like needs that we have that we worry about as a result. But I always like to remind clients that yes, you could lose some of those things or experience loneliness, but what can you also gain?
Yeah.
And who can you now be connected with in deeper, more fulfilling relationship, right? Than before? Or what job could you get, right? When you're doing these things. And so I think it's important for me as a coach to offer them the other side, right? Because we clearly know what the dark side is, right?
We definitely know the dark side. That part's easy,
Right, right.
and yeah, I love that.
And then
It's
offering them the opposite of that. And I think that that's the part, and I talk about this in the book just a little bit, is that we don't see everyday women like us who are making these decisions and choices and changes and then benefiting, like being better, being healthier, enjoying life more, like getting the job that they want. And that goes back to why it's so important for us to tell our stories, right? To be more open and transparent, because there are women who are doing it and who are like, you know what, decided I didn't want to be in leadership, that I wanted to be an individual contributor. I hear more of that more and more these days.
oh, me too. Yes.
But it's like, I may not make this amount of money and I may not have this title, but what I have is wonderful family relationships or wonderful friends. I have the healthier lifestyle. I get to have a remote laptop type of lifestyle. I get to travel more. I'm more fulfilled with less when I thought that I really wanted or needed more.
Yeah.
And so it is surprising, like I talk about this in the book too, like how much we consume in an effort to be happy or satisfied. And then you realize in some instances that less is so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just love that you did touch on the individual contributor, because I'm seeing a pattern of people wanting to go back to that. And then they're actually feeling guilty or feeling like they just
Mhm.
want to be an individual contributor
Mhm.
because they need to be this big girl boss leadership woman taking over the world. And I see
Yeah.
this with men too. I had a client who was like, he's in his 50s. He's like, I've never been a manager. Is that going to look bad on me? And I was like, but
Mm.
you've rocked it as an individual contributor
Mhm.
for decades. You clearly are amazing at what you do, and he loves it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you feel at this point you need to be a manager?
Yeah. What did he say? I'm curious. Like, don't leave us here.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because he acknowledged that he doesn't make a great manager and he doesn't like doing it.
Mhm.
But he thought that he would not be as desirable to certain companies if he hadn't had more, because he didn't have more management experience and didn't have
Yeah.
the ambition to be a manager.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, what that says to me, those aren't the companies for you,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yes. That's
Like,
what, yeah.
it's hard, like, and that's what I'm talking about, what we were talking about earlier, all these expectations of
Yeah.
what success looks like and what it should be, and which is, from reading the book, it is the underlying current of this
Hmm.
entire book, and really for me, for coaching as well, is defining success on your own terms. What does it look like to you? What does it feel like? What are you doing? It is not success does not equal more. Success does not equal a
Hmm.
higher
Hmm.
title or all these things that we're taught success
We are.
looks like, right?
Yeah.
Um, when people are on their deathbeds and they are talking about what they wish that they had done differently, it most oftentimes does not match what
Yeah.
we are taught to chase and pursue as success.
And I love that you're here helping people, and women especially, figure this out and give them that permission to carve out their career the way they want to tap into their core values. I know you talk about it in the book. I love talking about core values as well, like what's really important to you,
Yeah.
giving them some strategies. But can we please just all of us start living our careers the way we want to, building them the way we want to, and doing it how we feel suits us? And especially whatever point you're at in your life, what juncture you're at. I'm sure things change for
Yeah.
you when you became a mom, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like those dynamics shift a lot. I think it's just so important for us to recognize that our lives cannot solely revolve around our careers. Our careers are a part of our lives,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And, really the question when we're talking about how you redefine success is like, what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of person do I want to be? What type of legacy do I want to leave behind? And what does that look like? And how does my career fit into that?
Yeah,
You
the career
know?
fitting into the life piece is
That's
like,
right.
I think there's a shift. I saw a lot of shift over the last few years. And then I actually think that people shifted back into fear mode and were like, no, I can't do my own thing and I can't
Yeah.
freelance. And it's interesting to see how it's going. But ultimately, I think people are going to be tuning into your book, podcasts like this, all of that. They're consuming content to give themselves permission to do
Mhm.
things differently.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And I obviously have lived it. I'm currently living it. I would not dare say that I've reached the pinnacle, right? Like I'm always a student, always learning, always thinking about how to maximize, where I am and where I can go. Um, I'm also giving myself a lot of grace and just saying, you know what, it's one day at a time. And, it's learning, it's having conversations, it's being in
Hmm.
community, um, and just showing up so that each day counts. Right.
Love that. I love that you use the word grace. I love that word so much.
Me too.
Okay, so I love to always end with one question.
Mhm.
In the spirit of helping people ditch the struggle, what do you feel is most important to commit to?
I was thinking about this because I know you like to ask this
Yeah.
question. And I was like, what is my answer going to be? And I really was thinking about what is it that I really believe about how to ditch the struggle. And it really is being in community
Mhm.
with like minded individuals who can hold you accountable, who can hold up a mirror when you need it,
Mhm.
who can encourage you, who can share resources to help you, who motivate you, who remind you that, hey, it's totally fine. that you want to be an individual contributor, there's nothing wrong with that. You're
Yeah.
still just like you did for your client.
Yes.
Community is so, 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 so important. And I think that for me personally is one of the key fundamental ways that I ditch the struggle is to be connected in community.
I agree. Love that. The connected piece. Okay.
Mhm.
So, Gala, where can people find you? And tell us again your book name and all. And
Yeah,
I know you have a really exciting program going on too.
I do. So the name of the book is Courage, Clarity, and Confidence: Redefine Success in the Way You Work. You can order it from Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, wherever books are sold. You can get a copy. You can also visit some local Barnes and Noble stores. There are some signed copies that are available as well. You can find me always, galajackson.com for the latest and the greatest. And I also love it when people connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
That's the most current, up-to-date information is on the website and on LinkedIn. So it's just Gala Jackson on LinkedIn. And of course, you can always give me a follow on Instagram for a blend of personal and professional
Love
life.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
also on Substack. So if you want to really get into the motherhood and marriage and
Yes.
mission, which is career and all that stuff, you can find me on Substack. All of it's Gala Jackson to find me there. And as you mentioned, I am currently conducting a launch for a new initiative. Speaking of community, I really believe in making coaching accessible and affordable to as many women who want to take advantage of it. And so I have launched the Bold Career Collective, and it is a monthly membership community where women can join and have access to one-on-one coaching, to be a part of co-working sessions, to have office hours and ask their career related questions. All of that is there. So I'm just so excited. But the website at galajackson.com is where you can find all of these details. And as you know, when you read the book, there's also a free online
Yes.
community specifically for the book where you can go and download worksheets and exercises to help you do all the things I encourage you to do in the book.
So love that. I love a book with a worksheet.
Me
The
too.
coach in me gets really excited. I've downloaded and I've now read pretty well almost the whole book. And then the goal is to go through and do all your exercises because you got to put in the work.
That's right.
You gotta commit to it. You gotta
That's right.
decide. And I think doing the work with you is the best.
Thank you. And I love being able to do the work and to be, like have a free community with other readers,
Yes.
right? And then also to be a part of the Bold Career Collective and to have access to coaching that does not break the bank,
Yeah.
that you get to have in community with other women who share similar goals and ambitions. I'm just so blessed to be able to do this work.
That sounds incredible. And I know that there are many women out there who are looking for that. And I love that you're creating more community and connection. And through your book, it's community and connection. That's what a
That's
book I
right.
think is really about. It's the connection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
right.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Gayla.
The pleasure was
Um,
all mine. Thank
yeah,
you so, so much. This has been one of my favorite podcasts. So thank you.
thank you. Take care, Gayla.
You too.
Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so, so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.